You're listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guest is award-winning writer, director, executive producer Benjamin Flaherty. And we're going to be talking about his award-winning documentary entitled Shuffle. Welcome to the show, Benjamin.
Jan, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So, gosh, this is this is a heart-wrenching documentary, I must say, to watch.
Yeah,
But very important documentary because you shine a light on an issue that I don't think many people are even aware of. So thank you for doing this and being brave enough to do this kind of a documentary.
thank
So
you.
our listeners and the people who are watching on YouTube know what we're talking about. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what Shuffle is all about?
In short, Shuffle is a story about, what happens when people are looking for substance abuse treatment. There's an opportunity there to get caught in a cycle of insurance fraud. And you know, where an individual will get experience repetitive treatment and no real recovery, because it's very profitable to do that. And so you think you're getting one thing, really you're getting another. And it's just a really devastating sort of bait and switch that gets pulled on people. And, like you said very well, it's just most people would never imagine something like this would happen. It's hard to believe. And so I think it's important to talk about.
I definitely believe yes, I agree with you 100% that it's important to talk about it and bring awareness to this issue for sure. So, our audience knows, how did you get involved with this? What made you decide to do a documentary about this topic?
I got sober myself in 2018, and I was 41, and I got sober close to home. I lived in Chicago at the time, and I had insurance through my employer, and so that was how it was so easy for me to find a facility. It was very simple. I found a place, and I had amazing experience. It was transformative for me, and as I describe in the film, I didn't know what treatment was or what to expect, and so I learned what it was. It was essentially this step down process where you go through a detox program and then the equivalent of a day program, and they all have names, but it's something that sort of reacclimates you to your life, and it seems simple. And it was transformative. And when I got out of it, I heard a story from a friend who had gotten sober in a different state in Florida and had a completely different experience. And down there, he was explaining how these insurance policies are very valuable. And so people will be recruited into treatment centers, and into sober homes. And you can make a lot of money by recruiting other people struggling with substance use disorders that have good insurance. And I, the only way I can describe it beyond sort of being enraged and horrified at the same time was it had taken something that's potentially very beautiful and pure and that sort of contains this endless sense of possibility for the individual, and it had reduced it to this transactional situation.
Right.
And not only was that gross, but I realized that the potential danger here was enormous because of that transaction, because it was the insurance, because it was that simple. I thought, oh, we'll multiply that by any situation where the insurance is applicable here, and this, and so I'm not a math person, but my brain quickly did some nonsense calculations, and I was like, wow, this is this is a massive problem. Um, and so, yeah, I think I pursued it because I was outraged. I was fascinated, to be honest with you. The mechanisms behind this and the people carrying out these things, I was just riveted by it. A lot of them are in recovery themselves, so how could they do this to their own, quote unquote, So there were so many things about it that I really couldn't look away from it. And I'm a filmmaker by trade, I guess if you want to call it that, but I've been making films and working in commercials for a long time. And so while I had never really considered making a feature-length documentary, I I didn't know what else to do with this, and it wasn't like I set out to do that quite so succinctly. What I wanted to do was see if I could find the people who were doing this and were experiencing this and living this, and see if they would talk to me. Because I had read a lot of, journalists had done some work on this. There had been some exposés, and, the Boston Globe had done some pieces and some great stuff. But it all seemed that the folks doing the work could only get so close to the issue, And so I thought maybe because these are my people, this is it. I thought maybe I could get in there. And yeah, I did. That, that's it's a really that's tough. That's
Yeah.
tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And I felt when I was watching this enraged. So I'm just
Yeah.
watching it and I'm enraged by the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can only imagine what it was like for you having gone through, this experience and a different experience and then realizing there's something else completely different. It's just so frustrating, I think, over and over and over and over and over again. It's always about money. It's
Yeah.
always, always, always about money. Forget about the people
Yeah.
that are involved in this, the people that you could really help
Yeah.
and help them get back on their feet again. Addiction is such a hard thing to get over, just in
Yeah.
general. I mean, you've gone through it, so and then to have a system that beats you down and brings you back. Going through this process over and over again just so they can make money off of you.
Yeah.
It's just so frustrating. It made me angry when I was
Well,
watching this. So
yeah. Well,
rage was the
the
right word.
the real insult there is that, okay, so make money off it. I understand that you have to, but at least make the money off of getting people better. At
Yes.
least have that financial incentive move in the same direction as health. It doesn't right now. The
No,
most profitable situation is someone who stays sick, and that's just gross,
it's totally. So,
Um,
I think I say this all the time. I said everybody's, I think when we're born, I say this all the time, that we all have a cross to bear. So if we
yeah,
all believe in, Jesus or not, whatever, he
sure.
had a cross he carried. And so
Yeah,
we all have come down on this planet at this particular time to work through some issues, I
yeah,
think, and to figure it all out for ourselves. And
yeah,
it's different for each one of us. So,
yeah,
and hopefully it's, coming through the eye of the needle, basically. So, sorry,
yeah,
I'm
right.
off on a rage here. Rant. Not a rage, a rant.
A rage rant,
A
actually.
rage rant.
Yeah,
No, this movie really did make me like, ah.
yeah,
It's everything
yeah.
that's wrong with our society right now.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's totally accurate. I mean, you can use what's happening in this film as a metaphor for a lot of other industries. This is an industry, an institution, a field that's supposed to be taking care of the vulnerable, and we're entrusting them to do that, and they're just not. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Oh, oh,
Um,
I know.
and so that's tough. And how do you work against that? How do you work with that? I think that's one of the things we struggled with too. And our impact campaign, we've put a lot of thought into that. You can go to stoptheshuffle.com and learn both more about the film, but also about what we're doing with the film and how we're trying to create some impact. And a simple thing we're doing beyond awareness is just, the irony of this industry is that it's unhelpful but enabling. So it enables us, we want to rely on it. It sort of reinforces that idea, and then it's unhelpful. So we're trying to return sort of the agency back to the individual. I didn't know much about rehab or what to expect before I needed it. With 1 in 4 people struggling, or affected in some way by substance abuse, we should all know a little bit more about it.
Right.
Um, there's some real, brief tips you can look at and steps you could take if you were looking for treatment for yourself or a loved one that would keep you safer. So I think it's just about that for the moment, mainly is providing info to help people make some more informed choices and stay safer. We're also, trying to make some policy changes and some headway there, but it's a frustrating time to try and create change that includes nuance.
I know it is a very
Yeah,
difficult time
yeah,
to do that.
yeah.
You've in this film, you follow three different individuals and their process. How did you choose each one of these individuals?
Uh, it was very hard to get. like I said, sort of access to this population of folks for a variety of reasons. Um, but I met and spoke to and spent time with more people than you see in the film for sure. Um, it was just a gut feeling. I think at first what I was looking for was some honesty. You know, I needed somebody to. A lot of people were very interested in the camera and all the possibilities that might come from this, and all of this other stuff down the road that I couldn't even talk about at that point because I didn't know what was happening. And so, you know, just like with this film, personal interest plays a huge part, right? Everybody has their own sort of interest in this, and of course the people in the film did too, but they all, for example, Nicole didn't know what was happening to her until we met, and I kind of explained like, well, think about this way, and she was furious,
Oh, yeah.
whereas, Corey had been indoctrinated into it and was more complicit sort of in his own situation at times after years, which is, sad to see. But both of them were wanted change. Both of them wanted to speak out about this, and so did Daniel. He was Daniel, there's so much more to Daniel's interview that I'd love to share at some point because he really articulates how these people knew what they were doing. You know, this
Mm-hmm.
whole situation isn't by accident. It's like these people are smart, and so he really spoke about that too. And so I think that's what I felt about all three of them was, or four, I'll include AJ in that, because even though he was on the darker side of the story, he had a ton of remorse and guilt and wanted to bring about some change. And so I think that they all shared that in common. Um, and there were other people who had some very interesting stories, but I didn't know if I was like I connected with the individuals in the film. Like I knew like they always found their way back to me or I found it to them, even if weeks had gone by and whatever. I knew that we were sort of tethered. Um, and I didn't feel that with certain folks, and I didn't want to invest a lot of time in stories that I wasn't going to be able to, participate in with them. Because, the amount of time that I've spent being a part of their lives and they've spent being a part of my lives is so much greater than what we see on the screen. You know what I mean? It's a fraction of it. So, uh, but yeah, I think it was a lot down to gut and just, feeling like we trusted each other.
Very important in this kind of a documentary,
Yeah.
for sure. How long did it take you to actually film it?
I think at the end of the day, it was probably about 3.5 years. But we talk about this in the film. Probably 2 years in, I stopped filming for months because I didn't know if there was a film, you know. Um, the stories, what was happening at that time with the stories and the participants in the film and their lives, it was just real dark. And so I didn't know, so I kind of had to just learn to live with something that was sort of in progress. Um, and fortunately, not for the film, but for the participants, they had some good things happen. They made some good things happen in their lives, and so, we picked up again. But there was a long time there where I wasn't sure what this was going to be. So you can imagine how nice it is to be sitting here talking to you now.
Ah, yes. How did this affect you? Because you went through this process. You became,
Hmm.
as you said
Yeah,
earlier, that you became
yeah,
clean. And so then when you decide to delve back into this world,
yeah.
how did that affect you?
You know, um, I wasn't worried about, my own sobriety in the sense of was I going to go back to using substances. I wasn't worried about that. Partly because it was a different substance than mostly what I was dealing with and encountering, and so that was a little easier. But also just because it didn't, that wasn't what was hard. The challenging part was watching people stay sick.
Mm.
You know, one
Mhm.
of my it's funny to say this, but one of my favorite parts of having gone through rehab or treatment was watching other people get better. You know, it's a really beautiful, unique thing to see the lights go back on in another person. And So to watch the opposite happen on a pretty consistent basis for, months, if not a year or two at a time was hard. And I needed to take care of myself. I went to meetings because that's how I stay connected to things. I talked to my friend Joe. He's my sponsor. I talked to him a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, I made an effort to like keep my head above water because it was pretty dark, you know, and the
Mm,
vibe is weird. Like just the
mhm,
energy in these places or in areas is strange. Um, Lots of chaos. So yeah, I thought the camera would somehow protect me maybe a little bit more than it did, naively. Like, oh, I'm just making something here. I'm not, but it's like, no, we were all the same.
mm, mm, mm.
Some of us might have been less active in it than others, but like there wasn't for a moment that I didn't like feel what they were feeling, you know what I mean, or understand where they were at. So yeah, it was tough. But it was also, I think, a real privilege to be present and have these other people willing to share their stories with me, you know?
Because they did give you incredible access.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I only turned the camera off twice during the whole production, because I didn't think what was happening needed to be seen. And in both instances, the participant was like, nope, turn it back on.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
So yeah, I mean they were wholeheartedly committed to this and to sit down and spend some time and tell someone your story uh takes a lot of bravery, I
Yeah.
think, vulnerability, but to let that person sort of take that story and walk away from you for 2 or 3 years not knowing what they're going to do with it, and then it gets presented back to you, like that's a different level, I think, of trust. And so it was really nice to show them the film before it premiered anywhere, before anyone had seen it, um, because they had no idea. They didn't know the other people in the film, and so um, it was nice. I learned a lot about the power of being heard, uh, like what that can do for others and what it can do for us. It's a really transformative thing.
And
Um,
yeah, great
to
message.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what you hear a lot is people just want to be heard and seen. And
Yeah.
many people feel invisible for whatever reason, the way they were
Hmm.
brought up, mostly that, I'm sure. And then they feel invisible, and maybe that's why they turn to drugs and alcohol and other substances because it gives them that feeling of euphoria or whatever,
Yeah.
something that they've obviously missed. So that's why the addiction can start. And so I think when you finally are able to, or they, all of us, and any one of us,
Yeah.
wants to be seen and heard on
Yeah.
whatever level it is, because it's otherwise, what's the point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If we're not. How did they when you screened the film? God bless you. When you screened it, did you screen it with all of them together? Had they met each
Yeah.
other or anything? So you screened it
Some
in.
of them have met each other. A
They
few of
have.
them have met
Okay.
each other, but not all of them, no.
And so when you screened it, you sort of screened it individually with each one.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so what was the response like?
I think they were all just um really surprised at the scale of it, because as far as each of them knew, I just spent a little bit of time here, here and there with them over the course of, but none of us did anything extravagant on an individual level. I think the power in the film kind of comes when you put it together. And so they were, I think, imagining something that felt smaller in scope.
Hmm.
And so I think they were all proud of it, really proud of it. And I think they all really felt good about how they were presented and what they had to say. Um, and the fact that I also just let them be themselves. I mean, a couple times Nicole was like, I can't believe you left that clip in there or something. I'm like, why not? Like that's you. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think they were all proud of it. And some of them have been able to come out to Q&As with us and participate. And that to me is getting to watch an audience respond to them on screen and they get to see that. That's cool. Because there's the, laughter in moments of the film, and they come across as people, I feel like, and it's just nice to be able to help them uh have a moment to, see themselves a little differently. That's one of the nice things about like art, photos, making something, it's just this, it's a moment to like step into someone else's point of view and have a look around. And yeah, I think they're incredibly resilient people in the film. I'm so proud of them.
They were very brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, very brave. Have you seen any changes at all in the system since you made this film?
I mean, I think, not since we've made it, I think that what we've noticed is a huge upswing in, awareness and obviously support. What we were hoping to do with this film is just sort of make as much noise as we can because I know there are people on the ground doing good work, doing work to create reform, advocacy work. We want to amplify the work that they're doing. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to sort of make as much noise so there's some attention on this and people can do their thing. So we're starting to rally the troops, so to speak, as we're getting some press and the film's getting out there, all these people are seeing and they're like, "Oh, great. Well, now let's talk about this." And so yeah, so we're gathering people. I think there's some simple, I call it simple, um, policy changes that could be made. One of them is sober homes aren't inspected or regulated. They fall under the Equal or the Fair Housing Act, excuse me, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So they're protected under that. But there's a guy in Kentucky who's done some work on sort of reforming that law to keep the necessary protections there, but to allow for some room here to protect this other population. So yeah, Florida is doing some work. California actually has a few bills in the House right now, so we're trying to do some support screenings up there. Um, so yeah, so moves are happening, and we hope to sort of amplify that work and maybe accelerate that work with what we can do with the film.
I think that's one. Isn't there another organization? Oh, it is exactly what you're doing. Stop the Shuffle.
Yeah,
Yeah, .com. That's what you're working on right now is
yeah.
doing that. So where can people see Shuffle?
Where can people see it? Well, for the next couple months, we're going to be doing a small theatrical release around the country. So it's going to be screening in LA next week. Let me read it to you here. 20, wow, 25th and 26th, we're in Hudson, New York. Sorry. Time and space limited. 27th, 28th, we're in Los Angeles, Santa Monica one night on the 27th, North Hollywood on the 28th, Laguna Beach on the 29th and for 2 nights in Mount Vernon, Iowa on the 29th of January and the 30th. You can go to stoptheshuffle.com and get tickets there and showtime. It's going to expand. We'll be out to the Bay Area. We'll be in Austin, Texas. We're going to kind of be in a variety of different cities for the next couple months. And then at the same time, we'll be doing some virtual screenings, so we're trying to get it out to as many people as possible before we hit go on streaming services. So people can stay tuned to stoptheshuffle.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Stop the Shuffle.
We'll definitely put that on our social media. And this is very timely too. And I'm going to bring up a topic, but Nick Reiner.
Oh, yeah.
And wonder if he was because of his wealth and everything, whether he was his family tried to do everything they could to help him, whether he was similar in this situation. I thought of that when I was watching this film. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I heard his story and you see this hiding behind the scenes a lot. He was in repetitive treatment,
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's important for the public to understand too is there's an element of repetitive treatment that is fraud and very purposeful. And there is an element of it that is just allowed because no one really pays attention and because that's what the policy allows for and because it's become normalized for someone to go to treatment 15 times. That is not normal.
Not normal.
You know what I mean? And so whether Nick was a victim of fraud or whether he just went to repetitive treatment because that's his family had the money to do that, yeah, that's devastating for a person to repetitively fail and be told they're failing.
Yeah.
That's not helpful. So when I hear that story, I'm like, well, whether or not it was expressly fraud or not, or the shuffle or just repetitive, it doesn't matter. The harm created is virtually the same. Is that you're allowing someone to fail while at the same time profiting off of them. He's fully aware of that. Yeah, I'm sure that that's not helpful to him
No,
and his family. Of
and then also coming from such a successful family,
course,
and
no,
not feeling like you're living up to,
yeah.
expectations and things like that. It's just so tragic. That's just a
It's
tragic.
tragedy, and his family's wealthy, so he's not going to the cheap places either. He's going to the nice places. So they're paying a lot of money for this that's just not working. And for some reason, we've grown to accept that answer that
Mm.
it's not there's no accountability on the provider here in these situations. It's all on the client, and that's not fair either,
No,
you know.
it's not fair. The system isn't, but we could hopefully this film will shine a big light on it, and we'll have some reform take place, and we can make it a better situation for those who need the help and can get the help that they need, and turn their lives around to have a
That's my hope.
successful life
Yeah.
like you have, Benjamin. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you for making this very important film, and people should see it because I think everybody knows somebody who has an addiction of some sort. So this
Yeah.
will be helpful and shine a light on it so each one of us can understand it a little better. So
Well, thank you so
thank
much for your kind words. Thank you for having me, Jen.
you're welcome. Thank you,
Okay.
Benjamin. Good luck.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.